the checks, to the resume, to the call, to the truth. 2016 was a year of big changes for Jewel Tam. She was applying to college in the fall. But in the months leading up to that application, she had gone from someone with average test scores to someone with outstanding scores. And a successful golf career had appeared out of thin air. You learned today that those changes did not come from hard work. They came from $150,000. $150,000 that the defendant, her father, paid to a fraudulent admissions scheme to buy his daughter spots at some of the best universities in the country. Follow the checks, to the resume, to the call, to the truth. Because of his participation in that scheme, the people of the United States have charged him with honest services wire fraud. We have the burden to prove each and every element of this charge to you beyond a reasonable doubt. And we've done just that by providing you with evidence that answers those three important questions that my co-counsel asked you to keep in mind at the beginning of today's trial. Was there a fraudulent admissions scheme? Did the defendant participate in that scheme? And did he do so knowingly, with the intent to defraud? So let's walk through those answers one by one together. The fact that the admissions scheme existed and submitted false information to several colleges electronically, well, that's clear. The woman who created the scheme herself took the stand today. Miss Matthew told you how she and her co-workers changed Jewel Tam's scores, how they bribed a golf course coach and included false golf information on Miss Tam's resume. The defendant himself admitted that his daughter never played golf. And you have that recommendation letter and resume in front of you. So the scheme existed, but did the defendant participate? Again, this is an easy question for you to answer. You have the emails that show it was the defendant who reached out to Miss Matthew and hired her in the first place. You know that he met with her just a few days later on January 2nd, and he admitted to knowing about the $150,000 payment made to her business and fake charity. What this case really boils down to is that third question. Did he participate knowingly with the intent to defraud? Let me be clear of what the law actually requires of you. You don't have to find that the defendant was the mastermind of the operation or even the only one involved. If you think that he acted with knowledge that fraud would likely occur, then you must find him guilty. Miss Matthew, she took the stand today, and she told you that on January 2nd, well, she was clear with the defendant. She told him about the plan to change the test scores, the plan for the fake athletic career, and then he paid her $150,000 for the execution of those two plans. You see, the defense has a problem, because if you believe Miss Matthew, if you find her to be a credible witness, well, then this case is over. So opposing counsel asked her question after question about a plea deal that she took with the FBI, and in a few minutes he'll stand here and tell you that you can't trust a word of what she told you. Instead, defense counsel wants you to believe that the defendant thought he was hiring a legitimate admission service, and that it was his wife, Andy, that knew what was really happening. To ask you to believe that he had no idea what his wife, his daughter, his $150,000 were doing, well, that's just unreasonable. So, let's follow the checks to the resume, to the call, to the truth. You heard how the defendant handed Miss Matthew 2 checks totaling $150,000 the day he met her. In what world do you pay that much money for legitimate counseling before the tutoring ever even happens? He told you that he thought he was making a donation to a charity. But you know that's not true. Because 5 days before he handed her that money, Miss Matthew warned the defendant that the cost of her business could reach 6 figures. 6 figures. Not $10,000 in a donation to charity. When you go back to deliberate, review the email exchange between the two of them and it'll be clear. He knew exactly what he was paying for. Suppose that actually the defendant had no idea that anything was wrong for months after hiring Miss Matthew. Even if that's true, he admitted on cross-examination that he was a very involved parent. He told you that he read his daughter's admission essay. If he took the time to read her essay, it's unreasonable to think that he never even glanced at her resume one time before she submitted it. And on that resume, in the middle of the page in bold letters, it says golf team. But he let her submit it anyways, because he knew about the lie. The defendant took that stand today, swore to tell the truth, and then proceeded to lie to you. Luckily, you have a transcript of what he said when he thought no one was listening. Pull out that transcript. It's labeled Exhibit 12. You'll see on line 12, Miss Matthew tells the defendant, if you're approached by the FBI, just tell them you hired me for admissions counseling. If you truly had no idea about the scheme, what would your reaction be to that statement? Maybe you'd say, I thought that was what we hired you for. But the defendant? He said, I understand. I understand. He understood because he knew about the lie all along. And he was prepared to continue lying to the FBI and to lie to you today in order to get away with what he's done. You learned today that the defendant is someone who believes that when you are rich enough, you never have to face the consequences of your actions. That money can buy you anything. But members of the jury, you have the opportunity today to tell him that that is not how we want our society to work. Follow the checks to the resume, to the call. You know the truth. Find the defendant guilty of honest services wire fraud.